They tried to bury it. For years. For decades. The message was sealed, the warnings silenced, the signs dismissed as fables. But even as the world laughed, Padre Pio, the man marked by the stigmata, saw what others could not. He saw this moment. The world thought the great shaking would come from outside the church, but it is here, within the very heart of the Vatican, that the signs have begun to unfold. Now, as the dust settles from the historic 2025 conclave, a conclave, unlike any in living memory, eyes turn not only to the man now called Pope Leo XIV, but to another figure rising quietly in his shadow, Cardinal Luis Tagle. It was not by chance that Tagle stood before the entire world, holding out the fisherman's ring to the newly elected Pope Leo XIV, Cardinal Robert Francis Prevost. During that chilling May 18th inauguration in Rome, in that moment, a transfer of earthly authority was sealed. But in the unseen realm, the unfolding of something far greater had begun. For Padre Pio spoke of 3 final signs that would mark the great spiritual convulsion before the bride of Christ would enter her final purification. Signs that would expose the false shepherds and elevate the chosen instruments of God. And now, with every headline, with every decree, with every move inside the walls of St. Peter's Basilica, we are watching these ancient warnings materialize, not as speculation, but as prophecy in motion. Luis Tagle, long praised for his humility and compassion, has been strategically positioned as pro-prefect of the Dicastery for Evangelization, a role reaffirmed by Pope Leo XV himself. But few understand what this truly means. For evangelization is not merely missionary work. It is the front line in the coming battle for souls, the great contest between the light of Christ and the counterfeit light of deception that seeks to dress itself as mercy and inclusivity. In a recent interview, Tagle declared that there is no turning back from the pro-poor programs initiated by Pope Francis. To the world, these are words of compassion. But to those with eyes to see, they may be the quiet signals of deeper spiritual shifts that Padre Pio warned would come in the final hours, where compassion would be weaponized and where the truth of the gospel would be subtly redefined. And then, the rumors. In the hidden corridors of the Vatican, whispers circulate. Some speak of secret meetings, late-night conversations held under the pretext of charity, but veiling an agenda far beyond mere administration. Others claim that certain factions within the Church, emboldened by the recent transitions, are quietly preparing for reforms that will challenge doctrines once thought untouchable, reforms that would shake even the very identity of the Catholic faith. And Padre Pio saw it. He spoke of a time when many within the Church would fall, asleep spiritually, when confusion would reign, and when even the elect would be tempted to compromise under the weight of public pressure. But in that same vision, he saw the rise of specific individuals, instruments chosen for purposes unknown to man, but clear to heaven. Are we now watching Cardinal Tagle step into one of these roles? For even his rise to Cardinal Bishop of Albano holds mysterious weight. This ancient suburbicarian title is no ceremonial appointment. It is deeply rooted in the old structure of papal power, a link to the very soil of early Christian Rome. These signs converge. The faithful are left with a haunting question. Are we witnessing the approach of the third sign? The first sign was confusion, the blurring of truth. The second sign was division, the fracture within the bride. And now, the third sign, the great exposure, the purging fire, the separating of wheat from tares. Look around. Nations rage. The earth trembles. The hierarchy shifts from Rome to Manila, from the inner chambers of the dicastery to the streets where the poor cry out. Heaven's clock continues its steady march toward fulfillment. The voice of Padre Pio echoes. Still, pray, hope, and don't worry. But for those who have ears to hear, worry is not the danger. blindness is. And as the world watches the public face of the Church celebrate unity and progress, heaven watches the secret drama unfold behind closed doors, where loyalty, ambition, and ancient spiritual forces battle for the soul of the bride of Christ. The three final signs are not future events, they are happening now. But what few dare to speak aloud, what many secretly fear, is that the shaking inside the Vatican has only just begun. For as Pope Leo XIV assumes the throne of Peter, a new current flows beneath the marble floors of St. Peter's Basilica, unseen by the crowds, yet thundering in the heavens. It is the current of spiritual war. The Holy Catholic Church, one, holy, Catholic, and apostolic, now stands upon the threshold of her greatest trial since her birth. This is not merely a change of pontiffs, nor a simple transition of governance. This is a permitted hour of sifting, allowed by the Almighty to purify His bride before the final consummation. And in this hour, strange alliances are forming. Behind closed doors, within the Vatican's most ancient chambers, where the frescoes of saints and martyrs bear silent witness, factions quietly maneuver. Secret theological commissions discuss ideas once considered untouchable. Doctrines long defended by blood are now quietly examined under the sterile light of modernity. There are whispers of movements within the congregation for the doctrine of the faith, of pressures to reinterpret teachings on the Gishi, Eucharist, human life, and moral law, of globalist influences seeking to reshape the Church's mission to better fit the desires of a world that hates the cross. And yet, within this clash of light and shadow, Cardinal Luis Tagle stands. Some hail him as the face of compassion, the embodiment of the Church's new springtime. Others, in secret prayer circles across the world, speak of him in hushed tones, wondering if he is part of the great test prophesied by saints long ago. For Padre Pio, in his private visions, saw a time when even beloved leaders would be drawn into a battle larger than themselves, when good men would be tested, and the wheat would be separated from the chaff. And now, as Tagle continues his leadership in the dicastery for evangelization, wielding enormous influence over the Church's mission in Asia, Africa, and the developing world, the reach of his authority spreads like an invisible network, shaping the faith of millions. But in heaven's courts, the question resounds: to which kingdom does this network belong? For the true war is not political. It is spiritual. And as Padre Pio once wept in prayer, his spiritual eyes pierced through the veil of time and saw the secret operations of hell itself. Demons assigned not to destroy the Church from without, but to infiltrate from within. The smoke of Satan, as Pope Paul VI once cried, has entered the sanctuary of God, and now that smoke thickens. Within the College of Cardinals, loyalties are shifting. Quiet meetings take place under the cover of evening masses and diplomatic functions. Some push for a Church that will embrace the world's definition of mercy, a mercy stripped of repentance, a compassion void of truth. But the throne of Peter belongs not to men, but to Christ, and Christ has promised, the gates of hell shall not prevail. Yet the gates of hell are not idle. The council of darkness, as some saints have whispered of in their private revelations, now circles the bride like wolves in the night. Their tongues speak of progress and inclusion, but their hearts lust for dominion, not over souls for salvation, but over souls for ruin. And it is within this storm that Cardinal Tagle's rising prominence sends chills through the spiritual realm. For as he declares publicly that there is no turning back from the policies of Francis, policies that have already shaken the Church's moral witness in many corners of the world, the clock of heaven continues to count down. But suddenly, unexpectedly, a strange sign appeared. In a hidden corner of the Vatican, during a private restoration of an ancient painting, conservators uncovered a mysterious symbol. The portrait, dating back to the 19th century, featured an unknown cleric whose face bore an unsettling resemblance to Cardinal Tagle himself. Was this a mere coincidence? Or had the warning been painted long before his birth like a silent witness to heaven's foreknowledge? Some inside the Vatican archives, those who handle these artifacts daily, were said to tremble, recalling Padre Pio's cryptic words that the signs of the final test will be hidden in plain sight, waiting for the appointed hour. The hour may now be upon us, and outside the walls of Rome, in private apparitions and visions granted to humble souls, mystics, seers, and children of the Rosary, there comes one repeated cry: the bride must be purified. This is the moment. The scriptures spoke of when the harlot would be exposed, when the false shepherds would be cast down, and when the faithful remnant, small, broken, yet loyal, would be gathered by the hand of the King. The papacy itself trembles under this weight. For Pope Leo XIV, while outwardly presenting stability, faces pressures unlike any pontiff before him. The internal battle between factions loyal to the deposit of faith and those urging reform for the sake of modern mercy rages like an unseen inferno beneath the surface. Cardinal Tagle, now placed at the very heart of this tension, carries a mantle that may either become the tool of God's mysterious providence or the gateway for greater trial. For even Judas was entrusted with the purse, and so now heaven watches. The saints pray. The angels hold their swords. The bride of Christ stands before her most terrifying hour of labor, the hour that precedes birth. And in the stillness, Padre Pio's voice echoes once more. There will come a day when cardinals will stand against cardinals, bishops against bishops, and the flock will be scattered. That day may have already begun. The hour grows darker as millions of the faithful attend Mass in peace, as the bells of countless cathedrals ring out across the world, as incense rises into the vaults of heaven. Deep within the Vatican, the silent war advances. It is a war older than Rome itself. A war foretold by prophets, mystics, and martyrs. A war written into the very marrow of sacred scripture. The war for the soul of the bride of Christ. Beneath the gilded ceilings of the apostolic palace, shadows whisper. Not all who wear the garments of the priesthood serve the same master. And not all who sit in the College of Cardinals kneel to the same Lord. There are those powerful men who smile before the world with the face of charity, yet in secret councils they lay foundations for a church reborn. Not in the image of Christ, but in the image of man. The plan is simple, subtle, diabolical. First, dismantle discipline. Second, redefine doctrine. And finally, replace devotion with deception. And standing upon this fault line is Cardinal Luis Tagle. Is he a pawn? Is he a vessel? Or is he, as some now fear, the chosen face of the great test that Padre Pio saw with tearful eyes in his long nights of agony? For the third sign is not only a sign of shaking, but a sign of exposure. That which was hidden will be revealed. The faithful have long heard rumors of secret commissions operating behind the dicastery doors, commissions quietly studying ways to revise teachings on human life, family, marriage, and the nature of the Eucharist itself. And as these secret gatherings intensify, the ancient enemy, once cast down by Michael the Archangel, watches hungrily. For Satan knows, if he cannot destroy the bride from without, he will attempt to corrupt her from within. The Lord has permitted this hour, for the scriptures must be fulfilled. The bride must pass through her Gethsemane before she shares fully in the resurrection, and so heaven permits this sifting, not to destroy the faithful, but to purify them. Already, visions have increased across the globe, from cloistered monasteries to humble prayer groups. The Immaculate Virgin has appeared again to her children, warning that the hour of decision draws near. Many will fall, the Queen of Heaven weeps, because they were not prepared. My son's heart is pierced again, for the time of mercy draws to its close. At the heart of this drama stands the papacy, the rock upon which Christ built his church. And yet, the rock now trembles under pressures unseen by the eyes of men. Within the Vatican, Pope Leo XIV walks a narrow path, trapped between competing forces. To his left stand the defenders of orthodoxy, bishops and cardinals who still hold firm to the unchanging truths handed down from the apostles. To his right stand the progressives, those who, under banners of mercy and accompaniment, seek to loosen the sacred bonds of tradition, whispering softly that modern man demands a new gospel. And between these powers, like a bridge across a raging river, stands Cardinal Tagle, smiling, diplomatic, compassionate, and yet holding keys that may unlock doors to either sanctity or disaster. For it was not by accident that Pope Francis raised him to global prominence. Nor was it by chance that Pope Leo XIV reaffirmed his authority in the dicastery for evangelization. In heaven's eyes, every elevation is either a blessing or a test. But then, suddenly, a chilling development unfolds. Reliable sources within the Vatican, those who cannot speak publicly for fear of reprisal, have begun to leak word of a coming synod. A synod unlike any before it. This gathering, whispered to be in secret preparation, aims not merely to discuss pastoral concerns, but to formally revisit doctrines long considered untouchable. The nature of sin, the absoluteness of moral truth, the authority of sacred tradition, the understanding of the Eucharist as the true body, blood, soul, and divinity of Christ. The whispers grow louder. This will be the synod that divides the Church. And many believe that Cardinal Tagle, beloved by the media, adored by progressives, respected by the global South, may be positioned to become a pivotal voice, or even the future face, of this new vision for the Church. But what they plan in secret, heaven watches in full light. For the throne of God is not shaken, and even as men plot, the divine judge has already set his timetable for the great purification. Woe to those who call good evil, and evil good, cries the prophet Isaiah. Padre Pio saw these very days in his visions of agony. A time will come, he warned, when many of my brothers will betray their priesthood, when confusion will reign in the Vatican, and when my Lord will allow a terrible purification to cleanse his bride. The prophecies of Fatima, Garabandal, Akita, all converging. The third secret of Fatima, partially revealed but never fully disclosed, may well be opening before our very eyes, and the bride of Christ now trembles under the weight of her labor pains. And as the storm clouds gather over Rome, a sudden and terrifying sign is granted from heaven, not to the powerful, not to the cardinals cloaked in silk and tradition, but to the hidden remnant, the little ones who pray in silence across the world. At 3 a.m., in a small convent, outside Fatima, a young nun awoke from a vision that shook her to her core. Her trembling hands recorded what she had seen, her face pale with holy fear. The Lord had granted her eyes to glimpse behind the veil. In her vision, she saw St. Peter's Basilica cracked at its foundation. Marble pillars trembled. The dome that had stood for centuries swayed as though the very earth rebelled. But what terrified her most was not the earthquake of stone, but the earthquake of souls. In her words, I saw 2 churches standing within one of light, one of shadow. The true bride was radiant, clothed in suffering and prayer, while the false bride, covered in gold and praise, was hollow, empty, and filled with serpents beneath her robes. And the Lord's voice thundered through the heavens. The hour of the great separation has come. Even now, within the walls of the Vatican, many sense this hour approaching, though they dare not speak. Whispers fill the halls. Certain cardinals, once allies, now avoid eye contact during Mass. The very air inside the apostolic palace feels electric with tension, as though heaven and hell are both watching every breath. And still, Cardinal Tagle moves calmly through these chambers, shaking. Hands attending meetings, giving interviews filled with gentle words of mercy and inclusion. But those with eyes anointed by the Holy Spirit see a deeper war unfolding behind his soft gaze. For the final confrontation is not about earthly power, but about eternal souls. The ancient enemy, furious in his final hour, seeks to place his counterfeit shepherd at the center of the church, to prepare the seat for the one who comes after. And now, in a twist that no one could have foreseen, the unimaginable begins to unfold. The synod, long rumored, long denied, is announced publicly. But behind the smiling faces of the Vatican press conference, documents circulate in secret, outlining a roadmap for what some now call the Great Adaptation. Among these radical proposals, the redefinition of mortal sin, a softening of teachings on the Eucharist, allowing intercommunion with non-Catholics, the dismantling of priestly celibacy as a universal discipline, the reinterpretation of the Petrine primacy itself. It is nothing less than a re-engineering of the mystical body, and at the very center of these preparations stands Cardinal Tagle, smiling, beloved by media outlets worldwide, hailed as a visionary bridge between East and West, tradition and progress. But then, the hand of God moves. As the synod approaches, a divine intervention pierces the Vatican's unholy momentum. On the night before the opening session, a violent storm descends upon Rome. Lightning strikes the dome of St. Peter's, not once, but 3 times, echoing the same terrifying omen seen at the resignation of Pope Benedict XV. Power flickers inside the Vatican walls. And then, the vision of the throne is granted. In the dead of night, Pope Leo XIV is awakened in his private chapel. Kneeling before the Blessed Sacrament, he receives a vision unlike any granted to his predecessors. He sees a great chasm opening beneath the Vatican and a monstrous figure ascending, a beast cloaked in ecclesiastical garments, wearing the mitre of a bishop, but with eyes that burned with infernal hatred. The beast reached for the papal tiara itself, and behind the beast, he saw millions of souls, laity and clergy, being swallowed into the abyss. But suddenly, a great woman clothed with the sun appeared above the Vatican. Her voice thundered across the spiritual realm. Enough! She crushed the head of the serpent beneath her immaculate heel, and the vision shattered into blinding light. Pope Leo XIV, weeping in terror and awe, collapses before the Eucharist, and when he rises, his heart is changed, in a move that stuns the world and shocks the entire Church. He issues a decree, not after months of consultation, not after years of debate, but immediately, by divine conviction. The synod is abolished. The secret commissions are disbanded. The architects of the Great Adaptation are excommunicated. Even Cardinal Tagle, who once stood at the center of this unfolding drama, is publicly stripped of all authority, sent into prayerful exile in a monastery, his final fate left to God's mysterious mercy. The world is stunned. The media erupts. But the bride of Christ, though bruised, though trembling, breathes again. The purification has begun. This was the third sign that Padre Pio saw. Not merely the great fall, but the great separation. And heaven's warning resounds across the earth. You are either with Christ, or you are against him. The hour of compromise has ended. The bride of Christ has been wounded. The bride of Christ has been sifted. But the bride of Christ, purified by fire, still stands, and the gates of hell did not prevail.